Good morning, everyone. Professor Dr. Bligh, Executive Vice President and Provost, Claremont Graduate University. Kun Amporn Chod Ratsakun, President of Siam Paragon. Kun Nattawut Kirti Chayakorn, Chief Research Resource of Siam Paragon. Esteemed Executive Siam Paragon and Chulalongkorn University colleagues and guests. Welcome to the first ever session of the Chulalongkorn University President Distinguished Speaker Series. It is my pleasure and my honor to open this event, which marks a new chapter in our university journey toward international collaboration and growth. The President Distinguished Speaker event is a testament to our commitment to international engagement by engaging with global leaders and experts. We aim to elevate Chulalongkorn University international profile and provide our community with unparalleled learning experience. Today, we gather under the theme, Leadership in a Disruptive World. This topic is not only timely, but also crucial as we navigate through an era of rapid change, uncertainty, and unprecedented challenges. The ability to lead effectively in such a world requires resilience, adaptability, and a forward-thinking mindset. The highlight of today's event is a keynote addressed by our first distinguished speaker, Professor Bligh, an esteemed scholar in leadership and the Executive Vice President and Provost at Claremont Graduate University. We are excited to welcome Professor Bligh, who will be speaking on leadership in a disruptive world. Her extensive research and practical experience in leadership make her the ideal guide to help us navigate the complexity of today's dynamic environment. While leading in our current time presents unique challenges, it offers exciting opportunity for growth and innovation. Professor Insight will provide us with practical strategy. We are eager to learn from her today and gain valuable lessons that will empower us to become more effectively and visionary leaders in our respective fields. Lastly, I would like to extend my gratitude to Siam Paragon for their generous support in providing the venue at Next Tech for Siam Paragon. We are honored to host our first event here. Thank you very much. Siam Paragon executive team here to welcome us and share insight about Siam Paragon journey and their collaboration with Chulalongkorn University. Moreover, I would like to express my appreciation to all organizers and participants who have made this event possible. Your support and dedication are invaluable. I am confident that today's discussion will inspire and equip us with the knowledge and tools needed to navigate and lead in a disruptive world. Thank you very much for everyone for being here. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I am so honored to be here and to have such a warm welcome from the Thai community and the Thai people. As Poom suggested, our relationship goes way back, and it's truly an honor to be able to speak to you here today about one of my favorite topics and passion, which is leadership. So as mentioned, I am the Executive Vice President and Provost of Claremont Graduate University. And if you have not yet had the chance to visit Claremont, you will find a small, private, graduate-only institution nestled at the foot of the San Gabriel Mountains, just 45 minutes east of Los Angeles. I have been fortunate to be on the faculty there for 22 years, and have been both a student and a scholar of leadership and higher education for 3 decades. My comments today are based on observations and experiences on both scientific data and also my experience and individual intuition. I'm both a scholar of leadership and a student of humanity, and my academic roots trace back to anthropology, sociology, organizational communication and behavior, and the science and practice of management. I'm the proud product of a liberal arts education. I'm the first in my family to go to college, the first to get a master's degree, and the first to get a PhD. I share this with you today because these experiences impact me, both my passion and my purpose. This purpose in my life has been to promote both the access to and the appreciation for higher education, which for me has been a transformative source of learning and leadership. We live in a time where higher ed and most of our industries are being profoundly disrupted. And in many parts of the world, higher education is being both challenged and critiqued. Some of these attacks are well-founded, providing us a unique opportunity to reimagine what education and learning can look like in the years to come, and how we can all harness the power of education to tackle the challenges facing us as individual leaders, as organizations, and as societies. I was particularly grateful to be asked here today to talk about leadership in a disruptive world. The definition of disruptive is causing radical change in an existing industry or market through being innovative. And this is precisely the role that leaders and educators can and must take as we complete the first quarter of the 21st century. And it is precisely this challenge that is forcing us to fundamentally rethink both leadership and education. Today, I will focus primarily on the disruptive forces of technology and the impact of that disruption on both for-profit corporations and higher education. Although these forces, by definition, will also be felt through equally impactful parallel disruptions in globalization, changing employment relations, demographic shifts, and climate change. In light of all of this disruption, I want to impress upon you the importance of radically rethinking the way we train leaders and enact leadership, and invite you along with me on the journey I have taken to arrive at this conclusion. I will then end with some principles to take forward from here. For 99 years, Claremont Graduate University has been educating future leaders and transforming institutions in education, government, non-for-profits, schools, and universities. I had the honor on Tuesday of presenting one of our most distinguished alumni, Prime Minister Seta, the Presidential Award of Service, and have had the privilege of meeting and reconnecting last night with many of our distinguished alumni all across Thailand. All of this is due to another amazing alumni, Ted Gover, who is here with us today. Thank you, Ted. We have an incredible alumni community that is 24,000 strong, both here and across the globe, who are embodying CGU's vision of creating leaders and change agents that fundamentally shape and transform society for the greater good. And that is the power of education. That is the impact of leadership. These alumni lead education, government, education, business, and it is these alumni and all of you who are here with me today who will help shape the decades ahead as we collectively confront a radically disrupted world. In 1971, CGU was fundamentally itself transformed with the arrival of Peter F. Drucker, a modern visionary and, quote, the father of modern management. Drucker had already had a distinguished career when he arrived in Claremont. He had already written many books. He had already coined the term knowledge worker in 1959 and highlighted the importance of our transition from the product-oriented economy of the post-industrial revolution to the new age of the knowledge economy. The knowledge economy is a profound disruption in humanity in and of itself, in which growth is dependent on the quantity, quality, and accessibility of information available to each and every one of us, rather than on what has historically been the production of goods. This time period roughly coincided with the dawn of the internet, which revolutionized for all of us the speed, convenience, and accessibility of information to most, not all, but most of humanity. 2 decades later, Drucker was joined at Claremont Graduate University by another guru, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, the father of flow. Both Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi and Peter Drucker were rogue scholars, and for the academics in here today, they have an important lesson for us. they spoke directly to practitioners, not just to other academics and not just to their students. Throughout their careers, they wrote for audiences that would use the information that they were providing directly into their jobs and into their institutions. Together, throughout their careers, they redefined what academics and their writings can do for institutions and society. Both had experienced the shadows of world wars, and both understood what happens to society when our society and our institutions fail us. Both came to Claremont to reimagine and transform the study of organizations and their impact on humanity and society, and spent some of the most productive years of their careers writing and teaching in lovely Claremont. It is on the shoulders of those two great scholars and philosophers that we stand today to survey together the disruption of AI and what we will need to do to lead in an era in which, as Harvard professor Kareem Lakani frames it, generative AI has now precipitated a drop in the cost of cognition and how we think. If the internet was the cost of information sharing dropping to zero, AI is the cost of cognition, how we think and who we think with, dropping to zero. And that has enormous, and I would say mind-blowing ramifications, which we do not yet fully understand. Googling today, "Will AI?" leads to frequent fill-in responses from AI. Take over the world. Will AI replace humans? AI is not going to replace humans. I am confident standing in front of you here today to say that. But I am also equally confident standing here today that, as with any other technology, AI in the workforce will displace humans who use and utilize AI in their leadership over humans who do not. Next week, in this distinguished series, you will have a talk focused entirely on AI. So today, I want to focus on what AI means for us as leaders and as lifetime learners in a disruptive world. Digital expert Sean Michael Morris recently declared, AI promises to deliver education its holy grail. And as it turns out, we are on the wrong quest. I couldn't agree more. Morris outlines how all of the recent discussions on AI, its promise, its pitfalls, its potential to radically transform education for the better, to disrupt it entirely, risk giving AI way too much attention that deflects from the attention that we give one another. I quote, "Teaching and learning are and should remain human endeavors. The goal we should be striving for is instead interpersonalization, where we seek to create connections with one another. Those connections between teachers and students, leaders and followers, leaders and leaders, institutions and industries, those are the connections that will transform and define humanity in the decades to come." We are already facing what has been called an epidemic of loneliness among students and workers. The pandemic shattered for many of us what was a community on campus and in the workplace, and we have struggled to rebuild it. We have blamed technology. We blamed remote work and work from home. But the reality is that the pandemic only exacerbated what we have been struggling to work against, and that is the community erosion that began at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. If we do not reverse this trend, if as leaders of companies and universities, we cannot rebuild the interconnections, the communities, and the interpersonal relationships that define us as humanity and our greatest strength, we will indeed end up on the wrong quest. As AI becomes better and better able to stimulate human cognition, reasoning, emotion, interactions, decisions, and is always available, both in instantaneous, always on-demand way that human beings cannot and should not ever emulate, we heighten the risk that we turn to AI instead of one another, and we continue to become more and more isolated from one another as individuals and as leaders. Why does this worry me so much? Because the promise of social media, of the ability to make and maintain relationships, mentorships, and friendships in the digital realm has led us to catastrophic impacts, including the highest levels of anxiety, depression, and suicide that we have ever seen. The ubiquitous algorithms embedded in social media have done much to erode human connection, to polarize families and communities and societies. They've spawned bullying, shaming, ostracism, and human suffering. They have done little to foster and maintain genuine friendships and genuine leadership, followership relations that are at the core of human thriving, well-being, and of leadership. As my colleagues at CGU, building on the work of pioneering positive psychologists Marty Seligman and Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi have uncovered, human well-being necessitates, and let me emphasize that word, human well-being necessitates 9 interrelated elements called the PERMA +4 model. To thrive as human beings, we need to regularly experience positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, accomplishment, physical health, economic well-being, a growth mindset, and a healthy environment. Of these 9 dimensions, I ask you, what have the internet, email, social media, and generative AI meaningfully done to support and sustain human well-being and thriving both in and outside of the workplace? How can we capitalize on what we have learned about the limitations of these earlier technologies to support and sustain human well-being in order to build and establish a better track record with AI? Teaching and learning requires teachers and managers to develop caring and humane pedagogies that build meaningful connections with the students and the followers that we lead. Generative AI cannot replace a leader who creates and fine-tunes stretch assignments for us, who helps cultivate our communication and soft skills, who taps into our followers' passions, who motivates each and every one of us to perform above and beyond expectations. Both teaching and leading are mechanisms for the transformation of the possible. AI cannot give us human passion, imagination, or connection, but it can give us tools to help us find our passion, ignite our imaginations, or support and sustain our connections with one another. So I ask you, how can we build the essence of compassion and connection into our leadership, our teachings, our tools, including social media and AI? Peter Drucker understood that thriving institutions could be designed and managed, and that far beyond a tool for creating profit, management is a serious and impactful discipline. By extension, so is leadership, and in an uncertain world, the need for leadership is greater than ever. Unfortunately, as societies, we are much, much better at training and developing good followers than we are at developing good leaders. From the time we are quite small children, we're trained and schooled in the art of followership. We follow rules, we do what we're told, we conform. The challenge is in that today's knowledge economy requires more and more leaders, and we need more and more individuals who question the prevailing wisdom, who question common sense, who challenge what everyone knows to be true. Because in today's world, that prevailing wisdom is likely to be turned upside down and inside out with increasing certainty and ever-increasing rapidity. Peter Drucker famously wrote, quote, "In a few hundred years, when the history of our time is written from a longer-term perspective, it is likely that the most important event historians will see is not technology. It's not the internet, it's not e-commerce. It is an unprecedented change in the human condition. For the first time, literally, substantial and rapidly growing numbers of people have choices. And I would add, with our smartphones, we have voice. For the first time, Drucker reminds us, they will have to manage themselves, and society is totally unprepared for it, end quote. In part, we are unprepared for it because we continue to place most of our bets on tools and technology over human capacity and ingenuity. Despite its enormous growth and sophistication, AI cannot replace the spontaneous and original thought processes that arise in a classroom, in the workplace, in the digital versions of these physical nuclei. We have to understand that change is a skill, and it is a skill that we all can learn, and it can be taught through investment in learning and opportunities in non-threatening learning environments in order to take and make that practice of change a really proficient skill. Unfortunately, the last few millennia have been characterized by limited access to education, and by definition, many of the leadership roles in society that we all in this room embody. Education was less necessary in an industrial economy. Access to faculty was constrained by time and place, and access to knowledge was controlled by gatekeepers, first of class and birthright and wealth, and later by the successors of class, birthright, and wealth, pre-college preparation, standardized testing, and most importantly, financial resources. The US government spends 6% of its GDP on education, and over the last 10 years, that expenditure on higher education as a percentage of GDP in the US has decreased by 16.7%. According to Statista, the picture in Thailand is even more dire. In 2022, government expenditure on the education sector as a share of GDP in Thailand reached the lowest level compared to previous years, amounting for a mere 2.6%. Throughout the years, government spending on education as a share of GDP in most areas of the world has shown a continuous and systematic downward trend. Unfortunately, and fortunately for us in the room, this is a problem that the private sector and the education sector must tackle together, as the talent and innovation of corporations are directly dependent on higher education, as skilled positions demand ever more technical, soft, and managerial skills. As we confront the so-called fifth revolution, the need for and capacity to provide education to every corner of the globe has arrived, and it has arrived swiftly. For the first time in human history, we are interconnected by technology that has reached even the most remote places across the globe. Today, students in the remote Amazon can access information about global health, and scholars in the Sahara can collaborate with students in classrooms in Claremont and at CHULA. Last month, the New York Times reported on the internet's final frontier, remote Amazon tribes. Elon Musk's Starlink has connected an isolated tribe to the outside world and divided it from within. After only 9 months with Starlink, the Marubo people of the Amazon are already grappling with the same challenges that have racked many of us that have been globally connected for decades. Teenagers glued to phones, group chats full of gossip, addictive social networks, online strangers, bloody video games, scams, misinformation and disinformation, minors watching explicit sexual and violent content. Within 9 months, tribal leaders have declared, 1, going back is no longer an option, and 2, the Marubo, like all of us, cannot live without the internet. I ask you, how long will it be before we all cannot live without generative AI? In the face of this disruption, educational institutions must reinvent themselves to find and support lifelong learners wherever they are in time, wherever they are in space or place, and whatever knowledge they need to ignite their passion and purpose. In the fifth wave, ASU President Michael Crow posits that we must build institutions that are responsive to the needs of students and employees, focused on access, embedded in their regions, and committed to solving our collective global problems. Drucker also believed that management as a liberal art could build and replicate institutions for a functioning society at all levels: profit, non-for-profit, government. Authoring over 40 books and hundreds of articles, Drucker was a social ecologist who had many roles, but first and foremost, he was a teacher. His former students described Peter as a secular prophet. His classroom was his cathedral, and his organizations were his laboratory. Despite being a world-renowned expert and a consultant, his classes were a partnership, a sacred trust between scholar and student in which knowledge was co-created, shared, and then disseminated. AI currently cannot replicate this sacred trust. Drucker reminds us that we must continually seek better ways of doing things and continually improve our processes. He reminds us that innovation is the work of knowing, not of doing. Innovation comes not from altering facts, but from changing their meaning. While the traditional pipeline of students who are progressing from high school to undergraduate to graduate education is shifting and evolving in new ways, the need for education in the knowledge economy of the fifth wave is literally infinite. The market and industry have already fundamentally shifted, and so must we. Drucker reminds us to ask ourselves, would we still be in this business today knowing what we now know? What should we abandon? What must we abandon? And ultimately, what do we want to be remembered for? Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi devoted his life to creating institutions and environments where individuals would not only just survive, but would thrive. And ultimately, he made his intellectual home in developmental psychology as he recognized the profound impact of institutions across the human lifespan, from preschool to post-retirement. Together with Marty Seligman, he co-founded a new scientific discipline, the study of positive psychology and human thriving. He defined and illuminated an entirely new psychological state I hope many of you experience on a regular basis, which is the experience of flow. And he continues to remind us that success, like happiness, cannot be pursued. It must ensue as the unintended side effect of one's personal dedication to a cause that is larger and broader and bigger than one individual's self. Standing on the shoulders of these two giants, CGU has begun the process of reimagining graduate education and how we can best prepare future leaders for the next 100 years. In that process, we understand that the university itself must redefine and reinvent itself as well. In building the university of the future, we must define the core principles that will guide our transformation, believing that to create lifelong learners and lifelong leaders for the future in an era of profound disruption, we must first transform ourselves. These 7 principles are grounded in the principles of Peter Drucker and Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who jointly confront us to ask, what do we have to do today to be ready for an uncertain tomorrow? And how can we prepare for not just human surviving, but for human thriving? I offer these 7 principles for your consideration as you also prepare to move forward and lead in this uncertain and disruptive world. First, learning and leading must be inclusive. We must define our success by who we include in the conversation, not who we exclude. Sadly, admissions practices that flatly exclude a majority of academically qualified applicants are still the norm at our leading universities, both public and private, across the globe. Every human being has the passion and potential to impact the world, and education is often a necessary, if not sufficient, experience for many to realize that impact. The flame of light and learning must be continually fostered and reignited in order to sustain itself during the droughts, floods, and storms of life. We similarly and systematically exclude employees from management and leadership training by processes designed to weed out often rather than opt in future leadership talent. Second, learning and leading are both transformative journeys. Education is a transformative journey of challenge, of exploration, of failure, of risk, of connection, of collaboration, and iteration. So is leadership. Progress is rarely linear, often circular, and at times it looks like setbacks and restarts. As leaders, we must embrace the humility of not always knowing where the journey will end or how it will transform us. We trust that by following the problem, igniting and connecting our passions, and humbly studying the work of others who have come before, and being committed to extend that work to new disciplines and new places and problems, we will transform both ourselves and our institutions. We understand that failure and risk are a critical part of the journey. Third, leading and learning are collaborative and connective. The ignition and transmission of the light of learning is a collaborative endeavor. Ideas spread both between and through individuals like you all with passion and ideas that you share both inside and outside of the classroom and the boardroom. The flame of knowledge is literally contagious, and we know that communities of learners are the most conducive to that transmission. Our campuses and our organizations act as nuclei for the ignition and spread of those knowledge and ideas. But places are finite, and so are buildings, even as beautiful as the one in which we sit. Learning is an infinite force, not a finite place. We must work to nurture, engage, and connect these nodes of learning and leading throughout the world, increasing our impact and outreach by igniting and connecting areas of leadership, scholarship, and practice wherever we find those sparks, and we can nurture and amplify them. That's one of the reasons why I am so honored and humbled to be here to ignite those flames here today. As Paulo Freire, the Brazilian educator and philosopher, reminds us, quote, knowledge emerges only through invention and reinvention, through the restless, impatient, continuing, hopeful inquiry. Human beings pursue in the world, and with each other, end quote. Fourth, learning and leading create societal impact. Our impact is not measured by the publications we write, the books we sell, or the profits that we accrue, but by the individuals and institutions we transform. Our societal impact is exponentially increased by working through institutions made up of individual lifelong learners connecting with one another. We can both do well and do good, and to argue that one must eclipse the other is both false and short-sighted. Fifth, learning and leading are both ubiquitous aspects of being human. We see both happening across the lifespan, from the small children on the playground, to the soccer field, to the conference room, to the boardroom. A functioning society is not one in which groups of individuals are left behind or left out, whether that group is defined by race, ethnicity, class, geography, culture, age, or religion. As leaders, we take care of ourselves and one another regardless of background. We define our success in not just surviving, but thriving, and importantly, in creating spaces around us and institutions around us where others can thrive too. Learning and leading are both in their essence about people, which we cannot risk losing sight of in an ever increasingly impersonal digital age. Sixth, learning and leading are both purposeful and purpose-driven. We are all in various stages of a lifelong journey, and we're all scholars united in carrying the flame of knowledge forward. Our leaders are students who understand that knowledge-based innovation is more market-dependent than any other kind of innovation. We must be unwavering, and we must be relentless in creating and serving our customers. We must have clear KPIs to track their experience and continuously improve. And finally, both learning and leading can thrive in a symbiotic relationship between humans and technology. Emerging technologies will always transform how we experience, learn from, and think about the world and one another. As leaders, we embrace new ways to utilize technology and to achieve our goals. We solve problems. We create and enhance understanding. Yet our shared humanity must be at the center of all technological development and application. Engagement with technology involves using it. It involves using it collaboratively for human well-being, for equity, and for societal impact. The importance of human values, of ethics, of our intentions must be paramount. Technology is a tool to enhance learning outcomes, to facilitate personalized learning experiences, and to share access to information, as well as creating those collaborative learning experiences. Learning about, with, and through technology is a continuous process that both engages and challenges us as lifelong learners and as lifelong leaders. While the disruptive forces of technology will be continually felt in every new innovation we confront, both leadership and learning are essentially and fundamentally human endeavors. Both involve finding and unlocking the passion, the potential, the motivation, and the energy in others, and helping them find the many different pathways to their goals. Sometimes that means guiding, coaching, nudging, directing, challenging, and sometimes it just means removing obstacles and getting out of their way. It involves humility, it involves adaptability, results, ethics, and yes, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi would remind us, it also involves play and fun. Sanuk. Claremont Graduate University embraces a new model of education in which the pathway to finding and developing each and every leader's passion and purpose is welcoming, where the path is clearly lit, where we remove, not add roadblocks, where we provide signposts and guideposts along the way to assist lifelong learners in their collaborative journey. We welcome all of you who will help us to spread the flame. Our university motto, which is on my pin, is Multa Lumina Una Lux, which is Latin for many flames, one light. And together we can ignite and spread the passion of leadership and lifelong learning across and within our societies and the globe. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Professor Bligh, for the very engaging presentation, and always learn from you every time I hear your talk, and thank you. So we have some time for Q&A, so I'm gonna now open it up for the audience. So if anyone would like to ask Professor Bligh a question, feel free to raise their hand, and I'll have someone to bring the microphone to you. Anyone?
Hello. Well, it was such a wonderful talk that you gave us. One thing, well, my name is Atirokon Pongpanich. I'm the assistant to the president at the moment. When we talk about leaders, you know, many of the leaders don't have leadership. Therefore, you know, because of the characteristics of that themselves, that perhaps in many places, including Thailand, that we, you know, suddenly, you know, you realize that you're becoming the leader, you know, because of the promotion and things like that. So what is the things that you think that it should be ignited in terms of to make it, you know, the people who become the leader to have a strong leadership? From your opinion.
Great, thank you so much for the question. A couple of different things. In the last about 25 years, I've been teaching leadership all across the globe, mostly middle, but sometimes upper level and even CEO, C-suite leaders. What is always shocking to me is how consistently they share that they were woefully unprepared for leadership roles and that they did not see themselves as a leader, and in some cases still do not see themselves as a leader despite being in formal leadership roles. So a couple of responses to that very good question. One, we need to do a better job as for-profit, non-for-profit, and higher education institutions in teaching and preparing leadership. As I mentioned, we do a great job of teaching people how to follow. We do a great job in some cases of teaching even management skills. But when it comes to leadership, and by leadership I'm defining as the capacity, motivation, and desire to influence others, we do not do a good job of preparing people. And that is a tremendous source of opportunity for our institutions, for our colleges and universities, and for societies. I mentioned generative AI and its ability to personalize and customize. I'm optimistic that I do think having a personalized assistant to help me with some of my leadership challenges might help me to develop some tools, some tactics, and some tricks. But leadership fundamentally is never just a tactic or a trick. It is fundamentally rooted in your passion and your purpose as a human being. And if you have not yet articulated that, no tool or trick in generative AI or in my classrooms or in Peter Drucker's books will help you to lead. So really we have to start thinking about developing what we call the identity for leadership, to stand up and say, yes, I am a leader. Yes, I embrace leadership. Yes, I understand the responsibility and the potential impact of leading. And yes, I need to understand how to do so more effectively. Like any other skill, like any other role, it's a constant challenge to do it well. Our society doesn't help by promoting get rich quick, get to the top fast, glamorizing what leaders do, when the reality is that true leadership, and we all know it when we see it, is hard work, it's ethics, it's perseverance, it's compassion, it's care, and those things each and every one of us can enact, but we have to have the opportunity and hopefully some skilled mentors and guides to help us along the way. And you have a great network of those even in this room. So thanks for the question.
Any other questions from the audience? Still have some time. Please, anyone, you can raise your hand and we'll bring the microphone to you.
Thank you very much for your enlightening speech. I think we all learned quite a lot from you. My question is, in your opinion, what would be the maybe top 3 qualities for future leaders in the disruptive world, in the AI environment? Thank you.
Great question. So the question was, what are the top 3 characteristics most important for leadership, particularly in the context of disruption and AI? And my answer is, I don't think that those characteristics have changed a whole lot in the context of generative AI and disruption. I think that leadership always involves some sense of adaptability, because leaders have to balance being true and consistent with their passion and values and purpose with being able to adapt to different situations, different types of groups, different types of followers, different types of settings. I can't act the same way as a leader in a crisis than I can in other contexts. I can't lead the same way one-on-one than I can when I'm leading 10,000 followers. So we have to have that adaptability that is rooted in our core essence of who we are and why we are leading. So that's the first characteristic I would say. The second characteristic I would say is humility. Good leaders are always learning, they're always growing, and they're always looking for new leadership insights. I have learned so much from my students over the years. I've learned so much from teaching in different global contexts. I've learned so much from my current position as provost that is even different from when I was dean or a faculty member or a teacher. So constant humility, understanding that the world is infinitely complicated, that each and every one of you has a tremendous complex background and story, and that I need to learn and listen and understand in order to be able to really respect and garner your trust if you are ever to do me the honor of letting me lead. And then the first I would say, and the third I would say, in addition to adaptability and humility, is compassion. If you are not leading because you care about people, then you should not be leading. Yes, we make profits. Yes, we build institutions that deliver results. But if you are ever exchanging a result or an impact on the bottom line for a human life, I think that that is a trade-off that is essentially anti-leadership. It is a false dichotomy to assume that profits only come through the style of leadership of certain very famous leaders who I will not mention, who use followers, who burn through them to attain outcomes. That's not leadership, that is the exercise of power. And the exercise of power does not involve or need leadership. It just needs power. So I would say those are the three characteristics that I think are absolutely critical for leadership. And I would just add that I'm not sure that they have changed in the pre-internet age or the pre-tablet age. I think that as human beings, we constantly need those three characteristics in order to lead other people effectively. So thank you very much for the question.
So adaptability, humility, and compassion. So anyone would like to ask any more questions?
I think leadership is very important, as you said, but somehow leaders are also human as well, right? So what are the top obstacles for a human to be a leader in your view, and how could we overcome that?
Great. So a wonderful question. What are the top obstacles to becoming a leader and how we can overcome them? Unfortunately, I'm going to start with a couple of sobering ones. Being a woman, being from a particular background or class, those are big obstacles that many of us have to overcome. It is not the case that we all have the same pathway to leadership positions. If we come from wealth, class, and money, the path is a whole lot easier. And still in 2024, there are more CEOs in the Fortune 500 named John than there are women CEOs in those entire 500 companies. So if that doesn't tell you that women are facing some significant and additional obstacles, I don't know what does. So obstacles come in part from who we are, and as leaders, I think we have to embrace that. We have to turn obstacles into our strengths. I don't look like a stereotypical leader. I don't act like a prototypical leader. And I use that to my advantage to, I hope, engender the idea in my followers that I am going to lead in a different kind of way. So we can use every obstacle to our opportunity if we're creative and inventive enough. Other obstacles to leadership. The hierarchy in which we design most modern organizations, which I think is going to be fundamentally disrupted in the decades to come. It no longer makes sense to have 1, 10, 20 people at the very tiny hierarchical tops of multi-thousand multinational corporations. We need to invert that. We need the majority of people leading at the top because we're in a knowledge economy now. Ideas and innovation are the coin of the realm today. And those things are not necessarily always well suited by hierarchy. In fact, Peter Drucker reminds us that management is often the science of getting in employees' way of trying to do the work that they're trying to do. So I think who we are is an obstacle. I think our organizations create another obstacle. I also think that the way that we, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, train our followers is an obstacle Because how do we expect people to conform and comply and follow and implement and do and plan and act? And then, congratulations, you're promoted. Now you decide where we're going, what the strategy is, how to implement and motivate a team. And those are really significant challenges and obstacles. So I think as managers and leaders, we can lean into that and look for ways that we can empower our followers to start to develop those skills, practice those techniques, and learn from how we are leading, but also sometimes step back and let them step into leadership roles and positions. And that's a big obstacle. The way most governments and institutions are designed, there are few leadership positions and lots of followership positions. So we need to expand and change that equation. So great, thanks for the question.
So some little facts about Siam Piwat is actually one of the obstacles. They actually not really exist here, I think, because the first one, the executive leaders at Siam Piwat consists of a lot of women as well. So maybe you can have a conversation of how that can happen. I think we have time for one last question. Anyone would like to ask one last question, please?
I know that you're from Los Angeles, and may I ask you about one question about the leaders in Hollywood that you admire? You have any kind of the movie or the character in the movie that you think that the real leader that we should, follow through, and the reason why? Thank you.
Great, so a great question. I get asked this a lot by my students, and you're probably going to hate my answer. Because part of my belief is that leadership is everywhere. It's in all of you. It's in your parents and your coaches and your children and your peers. So I think where we really should be looking and sharing and emulating the beauty of leadership should not be in the movie stars who stand up and read lines, but should be in the work of leaders that are out there implementing and doing the hard work. They don't have lines, they don't have actors, they don't have retakes. This is real life, and they're doing it. And they're enacting, they're influencing, they're unleashing the power of their teams. And those are the leaders, what I call the little L leaders that are everywhere in our lives. Those are the ones that I want us all to be looking for, to be highlighting, and to be sharing that on your social media feeds as much as talking about the greatest actor or the greatest or worst politician that we all have, unfortunately, the opportunity to witness literally on a daily basis. So you all are the leaders that we should be highlighting, we should be celebrating. And so my answer is holding up a mirror to this room and saying, these are the leaders that I really admire and want to emulate. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything you'd like to end or closing of today?
Just one last quick thing. I had the honor and the pleasure of working with Poom, and this is a great example of, this was a student and I was the professor. I learned so much from Poom. I'm incredibly honored to be back here seeing how successful he's become and will continue to be. And I look forward to collaborating with many of you all that I've met here today. I really do believe that the spark of learning and leading has to be nurtured, it has to be shared, and global collaboration is one of the critical ways that we need to do that. So I look forward to learning from you all and continuing the conversation. Thanks.
Right, please give it up to our distinguished speaker, Dr. Bligh. Thank you so much.